focusing not on having an amber moment. Summer just wants me to be left hanging here as I am. I can't hang on any longer. We're going to jump right into it. This is Mel in the Middle, and a question is coming.
I did last week.
She did a good job last week. It was long.
Right. And I'm still thinking about it. Because I don't know. I don't know. If you're just tuning in, we talked about those scriptures where that person who may claim to be a Christian, yet is just living in this utterly sinful state. Unrepentant sin. Do I know? From my perspective of being reformed, I opt on the side of preservation of the saints. But do I really know? No. And I just been thinking about that a lot. However, I don't think that's today's question.
So, Mel, here's my question. Simple in nature, because I feel like we've given you some pretty heavy questions in the last few weeks, right? Mine is super more simple, but involves one of my favorite soapbox bashing things, right? I'm frequently telling people that it's not the adultery in the church, or the murder in the church, or the homosexuality in the church that destroys the church. It's the gossip in the church that destroys the church. So here's my question, and I'm going to make it political again just so that we can get flagged, and it'd be good. But again, we've got a whole bunch of people who are talking as if they know people like Vladimir Putin personally. They're reading the paper. They're coming up with their own conclusions, and they're spitting out things about him as if they know him personally, right?
Okay.
So let me ask the first question. As a Christian, should I ever be talking about another person as if I know them personally or things about them personally if I've never met them before?
I think I would be very hesitant in doing such a thing as that. And also, I got to admit, I'd say, as I was hearing the question, I wanted to hear such as. Do you have a such as? For
knowing talking about
a person as you know him.
Oh, so you want me to give you an example?
Yeah.
Oh, let me give you a practical every Sunday object lesson.
Okay.
Right? So there are people in the church, right, who are talking about other people in the church, right? So every Sunday there is somebody who's talking about Pastor Mel as if they really know Pastor Mel, or as if they're an authority on Pastor Mel, or as if they've talked to him about a certain issue, right? But you and I both know they've never talked to you about a certain issue. Right. So they would be in a conversation and they'd be saying, well, Pastor Mel feels like this. Pastor Mel thinks this. Pastor Mel does this. Pastor Mel has said this, right? But they've never had a conversation with you.
Face to face,
never
talked it out.
They've gotten all their information from gossip. They've gotten all their information from somebody's point of view in a newspaper, which we now know are not unbiased, right? They've gotten all their information from other sources.
Secondhand.
Right. So my question really is, as pastors, we spend a lot of time sitting around listening to people gripe about other people. Tell us conclusively about other people, right? But we've not necessarily talked to the other person. So again, I've heard a lot of stuff about President Putin about what a terrible, awful, soulless person he is. Have you not heard that?
Right. I've heard these things.
Have you ever had a conversation one-on-one with Mr. Putin?
No.
Have I had a conversation with Mr. Putin?
No.
Has Summer had one?
I don't think so.
You never know.
Called him up on the phone.
So,
Talk with Vlad.
so by definition, is anything that I say about Mr. Putin going to naturally be gossip?
What you say about Putin? Not necessarily. Because, for example, I'm just looking at the situation in Ukraine. He ordered that. Can we say that was an unjustifiable act that he did? Yes.
So can I stop you right there?
Yep.
How do you know that he ordered that? Where'd you get that information?
Oh, that's good. Well,
Because, like, do you believe Biden really does everything that they say Biden does, or do we think there's puppets behind him?
yeah. I mean, and then again, we really don't know that.
Right?
But the fact that Putin declared what he was going to do, I feel like that is enough evidence to say that invasion came from him.
So we have facts that say that Putin declared that he was going to do this.
Yeah, I do believe that he made it public. And I would also say the fact that arms were built up on the border, the tanks entered, the airspace was violated, and he made no retraction, given that he is the executive of that nation, has an rather absolute hold on that country. He would be held responsible. We could say Putin did an unjustifiable thing, though we did not necessarily talk with him about it personally.
So if you get to heaven and you find out that Putin never ever made any of those things, but his puppets underneath him did all of that, like he never ever okayed that,
Or maybe it was justifiable.
or that God said, Putin did this on my order. What would we do with that?
What would we do with that? What would we do with that?
Say, oops.
Oops. Yeah.
Here's my church example, right?
Okay.
All the things that you just said played into it perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at a situation that's going on in church. We look at two people, how they're interacting.
Mm-hmm.
We look at how a person's interacting. We look at that whole thing. We perceive something about how they're interacting, but we don't have a conversation with them, right? So we perceive that they look like they might have been at the bar last night, right? They look a little like they maybe have a headache and maybe they're a little off, on Sunday morning. And so we think that. Then we listen to a conversation of a few people over here who perceive the same thing, and then they say, oh yeah, so-and-so saw this person come out of the bar last night. So now all of a sudden we're connecting dots, right? And now all of a sudden they look a little tipsy. They came out of the bar last night, right? And then we hear somebody else say, well, I heard that so-and-so has had a drinking problem recently. Right? So now we've got a drinking problem, a bar, and looking tipsy on Sunday morning, right? Which part of that, right? Then I call, as a pastor, I call my deacons, my elders together, and say, listen, we have a problem, we need to deal with this. And we talk about, for an hour, 2 hours, Joe's drinking problem, his bar habits, and coming into church with a hangover. Right? And so all of that happens, and finally somebody says, has anybody talked to Joe?
I know it. That's where I was going. Who has talked to Joe personally?
Who's talked to Joe
Who
personally?
has had the courage to
Go on.
get in his face, and I want to say get in his face, not in an aggressive way, but just as a caring confrontational moment as described in Matthew 18. So it's almost as bad.
But again, which part of all three of those things, right? Which part of all three of those things initiates the Matthew 18 principle?
None.
Why?
Because you left out the person who supposedly sinned. You don't even know a sin was committed.
Right.
Where was the sin?
We don't.
The sin is the one who's running their mouth.
That's the one that's obvious.
You're the one. They're the ones who need to drug into the deacon meeting, or not. You should go one-on-one. But do you know?
Right. I see the whole.
Prove that they sinned.
Right. Why are you saying this to begin with? Why are you saying it to me? That
Like you said
needs to be an issue confronted head on.
Yeah. But we talked about this last night. You create. You assume somebody did something wrong, or even you saw them do something and you thought it was wrong, but it really wasn't wrong. It's just because you have problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just go to all these other people, and then you drag somebody, and you've then given 5 times as many people an opportunity to sin,
mm-hmm.
and to handle the whole thing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're just stacking sins. And guess what? The only one who didn't was maybe the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. So
Right.
And you're all wrong.
So the issue of possible drinking is inflated above and beyond the talking.
That could have easily been me, because I have a whole family, a whole pile full of alcoholics that I know.
Yeah.
But I am the person that tells everybody, you can call me at 3 a.m. I've had my brother many millions of years ago call me in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people call me in the middle of the night, and
Mm-hmm.
I will get up and I will wake up and I will come and I will do whatever. I would be the person that looked hungover in the morning because I went out to save them at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Because they called me at the bar.
Yep.
And you'd hear that I could have a drinking problem because, well, everyone else she knows has a drinking problem.
Drawing conclusions
Like,
that
I could
have
be
no-
that person easily.
Yeah.
So
It's way off.
there's a lot of people.
Oh, why were you out to see me leaving the bar at 3 a.m?
But
There's a
we
question.
would never ask that question.
Oh, who cares what you were doing at 3 a.m?
But again, all of this is done under statements of fact. Like, you notice that line that I just gave you. All of a sudden, it comes up with the fact that Joe has a drinking problem, because those are all fact. Came out of the bar, right? He looks a little tipsy today, right? Those kind of things, right? Has had a drinking problem, right? If you knew, like, for instance, in Mayville, right? There's a bar, the Lakeview, right? Hotel at one time, Lakeview Hotel. There are apartments up above it. If I got an apartment up above that place, would it not look like you were watching me walk out of the bar every single night?
Yeah.
Every morning.
Right.
I'm walking out of the bar, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah,
distinguish
and maybe
between
you work
those two
overnights
things.
or something.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, who knows?
So there's a lot of, but I look at this, this whole Putin thing, right? And I use that as an example because there are so many people deriving definitive statements who do not know the man, right? They don't know what's going on. Now, I am nowhere like defending him or saying anything. I'm just saying, listen, which one right now in our world is doing more damage? The actual war, or all of the fear-mongering gossiping that's
the
going
hate.
on about the war?
Hate. How much hate is there?
If the world could all focus its attention on helping in this war, right? That'd be one thing. But instead, we're reading articles of Third World War is coming, nuclear war is coming. We need to be prepared for all of these things. We have people who are way off sidetracked in things because of the gossip they're hearing about something. Right?
Yeah, but my question is, you said, when is it okay to talk about somebody like that you don't know? When is it okay to talk about someone you do know? This is what I said last night. We were talking about, the sinning, gossiping thing. And it's like, well, if me and Andy sit here and we just bash Mel, well, that's wrong. That's gossip. We shouldn't do that. But if me and Andy sit here and we bash Putin, then that's okay because he's not a real person. We've never met him. It's okay. He's just on TV.
Yeah.
God somehow thinks about him differently than he does about Mel.
Or he's a public figure.
Yeah, so it's okay because, you signed up for that.
Yeah, I do think, though, that...
But aren't you a public figure?
A person in public figure...
Aren't you a public figure?
Yeah.
Yep. You are.
Yeah.
Can I add to that question? Mel, is Putin, according to the Bible, is Putin put in place, allowed to be in place and in leadership by God?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a point.
So you submit to your authority and pray for him?
So if Putin is, this is the question that our viewers and people should have. If the Bible says there is no authority placed that was not allowed by God, why is Putin still in place?
Oh, let's not get really scary and go into attacking God's anointed, because we assume that anointed means you're the good guy, right? I'm anointed. I'm a shepherd, leader, or whatever, a prophet. So I'm anointed. Well, God anoints the bad guys too, right? God appoints and anoints these people to these positions, right? He did with Saul. Saul didn't turn out very well, but even David wouldn't go against him because he was God's chosen, right? So, however you it's probably not good. If God allows these people into these things in any level, from your level all the way up to Putin, to be actively doing those things, actively going against them, actively trying to destroy them, actively gossiping, hating, anything. Because we sound God oh, you didn't know what you were doing?
No, I think we recognize that God is sovereign. He knows what he's doing. Does that preclude any moral evaluation at this time of what is ongoing before us? I don't think that negates it or cancels it out.
Why would we do the moral evaluation of these people?
I think the evil of seeing innocent life just being eradicated calls for a moral evaluation.
Does Putin claim to be a Christian? I actually don't know. I have
No,
some knowledge.
well, I'm not sure. I think he would say...
I mean, that shouldn't matter to us, right?
Yeah.
If he says he's one of us and he's not, or if he doesn't say he's one of us, then, I mean, we know we have world laws and all these setups and stuff, but God has his law that we put above that, right?
Yeah.
So if he's not a Christian, do we have any right to judge him in any way?
I think
As
we
the
do.
church?
As a leader of a nation, yeah, I think a judgment.
But it's
can be
not our
made.
nation. It's not our nation. We're not under his authority.
If he's not claiming to be a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then whose morals are we holding him to? Morals that he's not claiming to have? Morals that he's not desiring to have? Morals that he's not... Whose morals are we holding him to?
I think the morals of God's created order. I think those are sovereign in the situation. That is, he's accountable to them. And I think there is that aspect of accountability that people can apply to such a situation as this.
But that's not our job. If he denies grace, that's not our... God doesn't say rebuke the unrighteous. He says rebuke your brethren.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He doesn't say go out to the people that want no parts of me and rebuke their actions as if they're claiming to be a follower of Jesus.
Do we get to hold... I guess the question there would be, do we get to hold non-Christians accountable for being Christians?
No. I mean, because they're not in the family of God, and
Right.
there's a distinction there.
So God says, the family of God says, killing people is wrong. But if you're not in the family of God, are you accountable for killing people is wrong?
Yeah, I think because of the created order. God has a created order.
But we don't execute that. God does, right? Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
That's true, too.
Not ours.
But that would be in the category more, I think, of personal ethics. When we get into the realm of relationships between country and country, there's...
But you're not Biden. Wait, how are you in relation with Putin?
I'm just an average citizen.
That's what I'm saying. Like you are so far out of this thing. We are nowhere near the level where we should be judging anything he's doing.
So let me ask you this question, Mel, because there's a lot of questions here, and obviously you don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to get people to think through things, right?
Can't wait to see the comments that we all love
Which
Putin
is
and
like
support
this.
Putin.
Before Putin was the president, right? Yeah, before Putin was the president,
We're
what
Nazis.
was he? I mean, that's pretty well-known factual stuff. He was a
KGB.
Right? Do you think that Putin killed people in the KGB?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right, like that's an opinion question.
Yeah.
That wasn't a,
Yeah,
you
we
know
don't
for
know.
sure that he killed.
We don't
but
know.
Do you think that he probably killed people?
I don't know, but I wouldn't put it even close to the realm of possibility. I would put it more closer to the realm of probability.
Right. So I mean, there are people who have worked with Vladimir Putin, right? They have come out and they have said, "Listen, he killed people. He ordered people to be killed." Right. So we could go with that, right? So then the question becomes, why did God elevate him to be president? So if the order of God matters, if all these things matter outside of Christianity, why did God allow him to become president? Doesn't it stand to reason that if all that stuff really mattered to God, really, like, and I think it does matter to God, but wouldn't it stand to reason that God wouldn't have elevated him?
Yeah, and according to our own limited understanding, but we could also apply that to scores of others.
Sure.
I would say God elevates people like him in order to execute his wrath on other people.
So go with me with that example, right? Was Nebuchadnezzar a bad man?
There is no one good but the Father, Mel. Just say that.
History tells us about Nebuchadnezzar. Was he a good man?
No.
Was he a godly man?
No.
Absolutely not, right? But yet God chose him specifically to use him to
He
come
was
to
a
Jerusalem.
tool,
He was
right?
a tool, right?
He was a tool.
But then God used him as a tool. But then he goes back to Babylon, right? And stands over his city. And the Bible declares that he stands over his city and says, "Look at what I made." Right?
Yep.
Now this isn't a godly man, so why it's in the Bible I don't know. This isn't an Israelite, it's not a Jewish person. This is a tool that God used to destroy Jerusalem, carry back some people. He stands over, he does that, and then God immediately sends him out into the pasture for a few years, right? But what does God then do with him after the pasture?
He was restored.
He was restored back. Now why would God do that? An ungodly man, right? Ungodly man doing really wrong things, destroyed Jerusalem, used by God as a tool, takes the glory from God. This is a pretty check on the anti-God stage, right? But God repeatedly uses this man.
Right.
And then restores him.
Right.
So he can kill some more people, apparently. Right? So Nebuchadnezzar didn't just, he got restored and continued to fight and do battles and do all kinds of things as a king would do, right? That's according to history books, not necessarily just according to the Bible, right?
Right. You'd have to.
So we look at that and we say, God used this man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that there's a problem when as Christians we sit around and talk about how bad somebody is, but aren't talking about the factual he's being used by God as well?
Andy, that is a really good point. Wow. I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't really thought about that, but that needs to be considered.
So is it possible that when we talk about church stuff, right? And we talk about the fact that what if all that stuff is true? What if a person struggled with alcohol in their past?
Mm-hmm.
And what if they were in a bar? But they were in a bar just like Summer said, right? They were in a bar because somebody called in need and they know the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went to the bar, right? And they pulled that person out. What if it was true that it was late at night, right? And they came in the next morning and they were tired. They rolled out of bed, but they wanted to be at church so bad because they needed to be. They just rolled out of bed. They might even smell like alcohol because they've been in a bar, right? Or the person they were trying to help threw up on them, God forbid, or something like that. They could smell it. All of those things are true. When do we sit and also say, and God might have used all of that?
Mm-hmm.
But
He
God,
uses everything for good. Everything. Even all the bad. He uses.
I like that.
But we pigeonhole God and we say, he only does this. He would never be in the bar. He would never help drunk people. He would never come into church looking like that. He would never roll out of bed and coming and being with the body. Especially somebody who has struggled with alcohol. They just had to go to a bar to save somebody. And we don't even know what realm they're in. What if they're struggling with the temptation because of what they just did? They went, they answered a call, they went out there and helped. They come in and they do that. And what is our church doing? We've spent the morning gossiping about them. Now we've done a Mel in the Middle about like which sin is worse, and we've done all those kind of things, right? But my question really is, when is it ever okay, Mel, for me to gossip about a situation that I don't know really all the facts about?
I'd almost want to say categorically none. Categorically.
So as a good Christian, should I really be saying anything about Vladimir Putin?
We went through this during the election with Trump. How many people in the church that I unfollowed? Because I'm like, really? You don't know anything about anybody. You don't. But even if you could be totally right about all of it, you just look like a horrible person. Honestly, like you're telling everybody I love Jesus, and you're just talking trash about anyone. If you're talking trash about anyone, I just look at you like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I don't care how true it is. If it's true, it's worse. I think that you're doing it. Like, that makes me nervous for those people.
Yeah.
So is there a time, Mel, where people in your church talking about someone else without knowing all the facts, without talking to that person, is there a time where that would be okay?
No.
So then my question overall is, why do we do it? Why do we put up with it?
Right. This is where the challenge for the church is to resolve those things in a way that reflects Scripture the best, and it's going to be uncomfortable, uneasy, unsettling. It's not going to feel good at all until the right measure is taken. The right scriptural measure is applied.
So if God is using President Putin for his purposes, his plans, what he's doing, what right do we have to talk about it? Where do we talk about it? What venue is it okay to talk about it? How would we talk about it?
That'll be the topic for next week's show.
You're getting really good at this now. You're getting really.
You gotta leave them hanging so they come back.
That's right.
Yes.
It's all strategy.
Somebody remember we're going to talk about
this
that.
This is marketing.
So we'll leave it hanging there for next week on Mel in the Middle. And I didn't do one single
Amber.
Yes! All right!